Start your day with Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal. The instant oatmeal ready to help you tackle whatever your day brings. Like wrangling your toddler into their car seat. That was fun. Coaching your 6th graders soccer team. Go girls! And carrying all the groceries in one trip. Whew. Try Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal, granola, and bars. Great taste and a good source of protein. Quaker, bring out the good.
If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from okay to very high. Know your sleep score with Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
Hello! Welcome back to Heed the Call, our Wednesday episode, our second episode of the week, and a very special part of our lead up to the draft. We are continuing what we would call a limited series. It's a special little series, our HTC Draft Cram Sesh. And that's where we basically check in on all 8 divisions, cut through the white noise, cut through the fog of war, and give you plain, straight, honest answers about what's to come. And we've got a couple of great guests today. We have got Dave Helman on the NFC East and our friend Arif Hasan on the NFC North. What we don't have today, Conor, is Dan Hansis, who is our friend who is getting some very needed and deserved time off. Reports are filtering in because we don't know where he is, but that he is busy, I believe, feeding the homeless, taking care of youth and children in need during his time away from the show. So, Conor, how do you feel about Dan being engaged in those activities?
Saint
We
Dan
are
of
whores for money.
I've always called him Saint Dan of Calcutta, and now this is where he goes and earns it. You know, I have dispatched a tabloid photographer just to make sure, though, because this day and age, you can just you never know. So
it's a big week for that. So I think that you're right on the pulse of things. I would ask you because we haven't seen a couple days. I know you're busy. Your house out in the tri-state area is bustling, and as we lead up to the draft, is there in the eyes of your many children, is there a glow in their eyes? Is there a glow in the eyes of your wife as we lead towards the NFL draft? What's the vibe?
I don't think the glow has anything to do with the NFL draft. I think the glow has to do with the fact that like the season is almost over. I wouldn't associate a glow with like dad is about to lock himself in the basement for 11 straight hours and then like only come up to feed occasionally. My son, though, is very locked in on the Giants. He's 5. He's decided that this is his new passion. And so I think he's pretty interested in who they might pick, and specifically if they might pick someone that I just flew out to California to do a story on, who's going to be a top 5 pick.
Well, it does feel like the draft is, especially that super sleepy day 3, they got to work on that, where you could sit with a child and maybe enjoy it, or they could help keep you awake, especially on day 3.
So I have an interesting take on this because I would argue they said that ESPN got way too deep into the personal narrative side of things. And the joke was like, okay, it's their height, weight, school, and then the most horrific thing that ever happened to them in that order when they get drafted. But I think my wife, who couldn't care less about football, and that's one of my favorite things about her, it does draw her in. Like I remember years where we were dating and she was sitting there with rapt attention about Laramie Tunsil or, Carson Wentz or Jared Goff. And like, she only just logged in like 8 minutes before the start of the draft. And I do think that there is some value to that. And I think they do a good job of like drawing in, your not casual fan, your children, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I hate to compliment them, but they do that well.
No, they do. I locked in my mind was a day sitting in the NFL newsroom on day 3 when I believe a cow announced the pick. And so they are finding a way to reach new audiences, animals, friends of the forest. But let's get down to it. We're going to dig into the NFC East with our very special guest. He's covered the Dallas Cowboys in the past for years. In years, he has seen some shit. You can be certain of that. He is now a co-host on the Athletic Football Show. You can also catch him on Building the Beast with Dane Brugler. It is our friend Dave Helman. How you doing, Dave?
I'm so excited to be here, y'all. And not only am I happy to see y'all, but look, I love talking draft. I love talking the lead, but the NFC East it's my roots. It's where I cut my teeth. So it's nice to be back.
It's a nice thick soup. And like, I haven't had a chance to work with Dave or meet him in person. I tried to introduce myself yesterday over text. I was in a hotel and I butt dialed him. That's how I met Dave. So let's try to make this a little bit more of a smooth landing. Let's start with the division winner, the Eagles, a very interesting team at this point. And so they went 11-6 a year ago, lost the wild card to the Niners. And this team to me, man, I mean, if I were to watch a movie on Netflix about the idea of a football team at this point in time, it might be the Eagles, because they're just, they can't seem to escape any sort of drama storyline. In this offseason so far, they added Reek Woolen, Johnny Munt, Jonathan Jones. They traded for Andy Dalton, which is an interesting move considering they have a Tanner McKee backup that people on this show like quite a bit. They re-signed Dallas Goedert. Key departures, Jalen Phillips out the door. He was a big player for them a year ago. Reed Blankenship at safety, Nakobe Dean. They lost a couple guys on defense. So their top needs right now look to be defensive end, wide receiver, offensive line. They've got a first-round pick at number 23. I will say, though, it's just like this team hangs in the atmosphere to me. No matter what time of year it is, where they're on their fifth offensive coordinator since 2020, they're a year removed from the Super Bowl. Half the population doesn't believe in their head coach. The other does. The star wide receiver is likely to get traded. And we can't go a week without whispers and a whisper campaign about what the people in the building feel about Jalen Hurts. So, Dave, what do you think Howie Roseman's next move is here?
I wish the Eagles could just be normal. But like, why is a team this good, this addicted to drama? I will never understand. I guess to answer your question more directly, I'm conflicted about the Eagles because I agree with y'all, or I agree with you, Mark, that I don't know, the writing seems on the wall that A.J. Brown is going to be on his way out of Philadelphia when the calendar hits June, which even with Devontae Smith seems like it would create a pretty big need at wide receiver. And yet I firmly expect Howie Roseman to draft a lineman who played at an SEC school on April 23rd. Whoever you prefer, that could be a tackle or an edge. I don't really care, but I think the Eagles are going to wait on that receiver need and take a right tackle heir apparent to Lane Johnson or add to their pass rush. That feels like what I expect the Eagles to do. And then maybe we sort out the A.J. Brown of it all on Friday with all of those extra picks they have.
That's it. I mean, day two almost guarantees you moving A.J. Brown after day one almost guarantees you first round next year comp, which is so much more valuable, I think, than first round this year comp. You're going to get a sample size of teams that missed out on the wide receiver that they wanted on the first day. And all of a sudden, A.J. Brown looks like the belle of the ball. But I agree. I mean, replenishing the offensive line is kind of the only thing that they have that I think is at the top of their bingo card. And we noticed they've added tight ends. They've made it a priority to re-sign tight ends. And I wonder if instead of kind of fighting the Jalen Hurts of it all, they're just sort of accepting the fact that they're going to have to play bigger than other people. They're going to have to vanilla this passing game or continue to vanilla this passing game. And they'd rather do it in 12 personnel, 13 personnel. They'd rather run the ball 25, 30 times a game and let Jalen Hurts just kind of remove himself from the equation like the Homer Simpson gif, right? And I think, drafting a right tackle fits in line with all that, I think.
Do you think there's a Howie Roseman to it all that does not want to do future business contract-wise with Jalen Hurts? Because if you kind of look at what this team has been, like they got there on a rookie deal to the Super Bowl with Carson Wentz, although it was Nick Foles, and they did it with Jalen Hurts. Like, is that the model for Howie Roseman? Like, not that it's going to happen this year, but is it rebuild the team around him, but then at some point we're moving on to the world of the rookie quarterback contract?
Okay, now this puts me in a funny spot where I've never been the biggest believer in Jalen Hurts. Like I feel like I've felt the same about him across the last 3 years. But it's funny, if you can just stick in the middle, I don't feel that much differently about Jalen Hurts right now than I did when he won Super Bowl MVP. I just think he's an adequate quarterback who can clearly get you where you want to go if you've got the right talent around him. And I'm not in a world where I'm really worried about what happens with Jalen Hurts' next contract just yet. Like I'm really not. Do y'all think I'm off base for that? I'm more along the lines of Jalen Hurts has proven twice that he can get you to the game you want to be in if the rest of your roster is up to snuff. And yeah, last year wasn't good, but guess what? 2024 wasn't as great as the championship trophy would have you believe either. So I'm not panicking about that. And I think it's a valid point to bring up that, I mean, Howie Roseman is so good at being 1 or 2 years ahead of the curve.
Yes.
And if he wants to start looking out into the landscape for a quarterback of the future, or if he's already drawing up designs on whether he wants to extend Hurts again and what that number would be, that wouldn't surprise me at all. But that, I mean, I look at it like that's more for him to be worried about as opposed to me. Like, I think that Eagles absolutely have another couple years of contention. Like, I think that's completely within the realm of possibility with Jalen Hurts as their quarterback.
I think that this is the ultimate test of what they've espoused over the years. Like, I remember when they went to that Super Bowl that they won, standing next to Jeffrey Lurie in the Eagles locker room, full of cigar smoke, and he's talking about Red Auerbach and the Celtics and knowing when to move before it's time. And this is why we fired Doug Peterson early before everyone expected it. But what's interesting about this wrinkle is Jalen Hurts is primarily the creation of Jeffrey Lurie. Jeffrey Lurie fell in love with Jalen Hurts. He was walking around the draft room at the time being like, this is the next Russell Wilson. I can feel it. He drafted him when they had Carson Wentz, and he was right. But now the onus is on him. It's the guy who fell in love with Jalen Hurts before everybody else, saw what nobody else saw. But now do you have the ability to move on from him when it's clear that he does not suit your needs anymore? At least not with the strength of the roster as it is. And so that's what I think.
Yeah, that's why they remain. I just think the NFC is beguiling, fascinating, interesting, cutting edge type of team. Let's move on to what I like to call Dave's treasure chest, the Dallas Cowboys. All right. Now they've been a little more active than in some previous years where people complaining about what they did. They trade for Rashawn Gary, 4th round pick, I believe, for that. They pick up Jalen Thompson, PJ Locke, Tyrus Wheat.
We certainly have made a trade.
Yes, you did. I see departures like with Osa leaving, Solomon Thomas. Like there is some need on that defense. And I think the key issue there also is what happens with George Pickens. They franchised him. Is it going to be another summer-long sit and wait for them to do something or come up with an answer there? Terrence Steele sticks around, Javonte Williams. I would ask you this, Dave, because this is a team that finished 7-9-1 under Brian Schottenheimer. They've got 2 first-round picks. Is this team in a situation right now where they really are in a position to really change the Cowboys over maybe the next half decade with 2 first-round picks off of the Micah Parsons trade, part of that? Like, do you trust them to do something transformative, or is it the same old story in Dallas?
So I think when you talk about the top of this draft, I have a hard time believing that they're going to transform this defense with the talent that's available to them. I mean, I think like the uncomfortable truth of the matter is it's a bad year to have 2 top 20 picks. However, anything is possible. We see hidden gems in the draft all the time. I mean, the guy that has prompted all of this angst, Micah Parsons, fell all the way to 12. He was absolutely not supposed to be what he wound up being. So anything is possible. I think the more realistic outcome is that the Cowboys address this defense well enough to give their offense a shot to do something special. And I'm always painted as a bit of a Cowboys pessimist. I lived it a little too long to trust that they're going to get it right or be willing to do everything that they need to do. I mean, I've been saying throughout the spring, I didn't hate what they did in free agency. It was a step short of where they need to be. Like they just have one and a half too many needs to be heading into the draft with their roster in its current format. I will give them the credit of saying, though, George Pickens was not on the roster when the draft ended last year. So there is still time to do these things. I don't think the Cowboys are that far away from being a team that can make some serious noise. Like, especially if the Eagles are a half step worse than they were heading into last year. I think the Giants and Commanders are still a year or so away from being real factors. I don't think the Cowboys are that far away. I think it just hinges on how much ground you think they can gain with 3 big draft picks. I guess it's within the realm of possibility that they hit a grand slam in this draft and are ready to do that. I think the realistic outcome is a little short of that.
What's weird is I look at the Cowboys and I think it is obviously a defense first need, right? But I think I've never seen a team that when they do give away some of the valuable defensive players that they do, despite the fact that they have needs defensively, they give away the ones that are so universally beloved. And so in this case, Solomon Thomas and Oso Odigizua were probably 2 of the greatest humans in that building. And in terms of like emotional equity, you talk to the coaches that were around them, those were the guys that were keeping things together in a season where everybody had the right to be entirely cynical of the operation and maybe not want to show up and throw their body in front of a bus every week. And so it's kind of interesting because last year, Jerry went vibes with the Booker pick. And Booker, you talk to anybody in the NFL, was blowing people away with the interpersonal pre-draft. They loved who he was just as much as what he could do. And I'm wondering if that's the path again this year, where it's like, hey, we need defensive help, but we also need guys that we're going to want around for the long term, because I do think that there was a little bit of maybe cynicism baking into the star a little bit.
It puts a lot of pressure on Christian Parker, who it's another new, it's kind of like the defensive version of the Eagles, where it's another person adopting, taking in the personnel, maybe not the perfect for his fit for his scheme, but he's got to work with what he has. And I mean, I did hear Schottenheimer say that at the complex, he's got defensive players sitting in Christian Parker's office, like talking nonstop. There's a lot of interaction. Like, I don't know how much of that is a day-to-day reality, but what have you guys heard about Christian Parker, Dave? And like, do you feel like this is someone that can turn this around? Because last year that was the undoing.
You know, it's funny, co-hosting the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays. I have a fun receipt because and obviously we're talking to Conor, who does such great work with the coaching industry and up and comers in that realm. I remember when Christian Parker got hired, and obviously I keep an ear to the ground with all things Dallas, no matter what I'm doing. And there was an air of cynicism almost, where it was like, okay, how many people really knew who Christian Parker was 2 months ago, and now everybody's acting like he's going to be this savior of the Dallas defense? And again, working with Robert, I was like, not true. Christian Parker has so many fans, and so many people have been well aware of the type of guy that he is, dating all the way back to when he was in Denver with Vic Fangio.
Agreed.
Like, this is a guy who checks the boxes if you're looking for an up-and-coming star. Obviously, we don't know for sure that that'll be the case, but he has all the hallmarks. And I combine that with, you know, the thing that really got me on board with the Schottenheimer hire, and I was not a fan of the process that led to him, but when he hired Clayton Adams to be his OC, I was like, okay, this guy's paying attention and is like, he knows who's hot in the coaching world and who is doing new, exciting stuff. This is a really good hire. And lo and behold, not to give Clayton Adams all of the credit, but their offense kicked ass last year. And so you turn around and hire a guy in Christian Parker who has similar amounts of people rooting for him and invested in him. I think the world of it. I don't know if he can turn it all around in 1 year, but I feel pretty good about it.
It's hard when you make like the up and coming coaching list. It's like, what's the meme? It's like the worst person you know just made an excellent point. It's like,
that's so perfect.
Like when the Dallas Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer, I mean, it was like at 11:45 p.m. and I just finished putting all the kids to bed and everyone's waking up and I'm in the worst mood. And so I burned down Frisco on SI.com and just like leave no trace of a body. And then he goes out and ends up hiring like 4 of my favorite coaches to round out the staff. And I was like, you know what? Actually, he might be doing a pretty good job there. I don't know.
The process can be terrible and still yield good results, unfortunately.
That's true. Yeah.
That is a thing that can happen.
I love that. All right, let's move on to Washington. One of the more disappointing teams in the entire conference, obviously, a year ago. They missed the playoffs. They're 5-12. I think Dan Quinn under a little bit of pressure here. Adafiowe they added, Leo Chanel, Tim Settle, Clavon Chason, Chico Conquo, who I know Justin Titans guy. I kind of like him at tight end, but he's a little under the radar. They keep Marcus Mariota, Traylon Burks, both their kicker, Jake Moody, and punter Tress Way. Tyler Biadasz is gone, Chris Rodriguez. And their needs are, I think it's like get back to running a Dan Quinn defense, not super veteran heavy, which it's been one of the oldest teams in the league, but address this. And you've got the number 7th pick in the draft. You need defensive line. You need defensive backs. A wide receiver would help, I think, a lot. Like, I do wonder with this team, I just wonder if Dan Quinn is under a lot of pressure with the whole situation with your quarterback at Jaden Daniel. Like, you've got to kind of turn around and get back to where we were 2 years ago. And I wonder if there's any push and pull between what Adam Peters might want if he looks at someone like a Sonny Styles, who he had like a Fred Warner in San Francisco. Do we recenter the defense around someone like that? Or do we go wide receiver and keep building around the quarterback, Dave, which has got to be priority number one most of the time for the Commanders?
I don't know anything for sure. Maybe, Conor, you're so plugged in, maybe you could shed some light. But when you fall from NFC title game to abysmal, forgettable season, and you shove both of your coordinators out the door in the process, like, how could Dan Quinn be not under pressure? Like, this feels very much like a get back above 500 or it's your ass type of year. Like,
you've used your scapegoats, basically.
Yeah, that's my read on it from afar. I am fascinated by the Commanders. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the receiver depth chart scares the absolute bejesus out of me. I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. I don't know how Traylon Burks is in your starting lineup heading into the NFL draft. That seems scary. I think the secondary is probably something that you want to work on, even though I love the additions of Nick Cross and Amik Robertson. But I still think you could stand to upgrade that. My thing is with the Commanders, and I love that Graver's listening to this. He can chime in if he wants to. The way this thing lines up, you could use a receiver, you could go defense, maybe if one of the Ohio State guys falls to you. But what if Jeremiah Love is there for some reason, and all of a sudden you're like, this is the best or second best player on our board, and we got him at 7, and no, we don't really need a running back, but he could make a huge impact. Again, if you're talking about a guy who's feeling pressure to deliver, I do think Jeremiah Love could like raise the floor of Washington's offense and be really dynamic right away. Is that the most responsible way to spend a top 10 pick? I don't know, but I'm fascinated by the idea that the Commanders might have to make that decision.
I can jump in to say I think Jeremiah Love is a tremendous player. He's my favorite prospect in this draft.
And he won't be there because he's a Titan.
He probably won't be there because the Titans will take him at 4, and if they don't, then the Giants will take him at 5. Which is, I don't know if that's true. You can see if you're watching on YouTube over my shoulder, I have a new addition to my background that says Jeremiah Love no matter what. Classic draft day reference. Haha.
Thank you for walking us through that, Justin.
Yeah, of course. I think that Dan Quinn has fired Cliff Kingsbury or whatever, mutually parted ways, because he wants to get back to a more under center attack. And what better way to do that than with a elite bell cow running back? I know they signed Rashad White and Jerome Ford in free agency. Both of those guys.
Does Dan know who his quarterback is? Like, has Jaden ever taken an under center snap?
They are going to do that with David Blau, though. He's been very heavily on the record saying that and I think it's coming from Quinn too, and it's a little bit of a risk, but they're changing the way this quarterback plays.
Hey, you see my LSU baseball hat, I was about to have a stroke watching Jaden do 4th and 1 from the gun. So I'm ready for Jaden to play under center, please.
It's sort of a push all the chips in move by Dan Quinn, because if it backfires and Jaden struggles in this new offense, Dan Quinn's the one that they're more tied to their franchise quarterback than they are to the head coach, even if the head coach helped bring them back from the dead or whatever. But I do think Jeremiah Love is the kind of guy who Rashad White and Jerome Ford don't preclude you from drafting the most talented offensive player in the draft if he's on the board at 7. And I don't think anyone should have any qualms about positional value there, because every other player in this draft, in my eyes, has question marks that Jeremiah Love simply just doesn't have. The only question mark on Love is positional value. That's not about him as a player. So to me, he's the best pick for like 5 different teams in the top 10. Sure.
You should track Justin arguing with people about this on the internet, by the way. It's getting intense, I would say offensive in many ways. And so I would just check that out. But Love, I put in the category of, when you talk about the context of the Commanders' draft needs, he's not just a running back. It's like how we talked about a couple weeks ago, Charlie Kolar and Alec Ingold not just being tight ends and fullbacks, but essentially being an extension of the offensive line, right? Jeremiah Love is a great blocking back. He's a willing blocking back, which I think makes a big difference. One of his coaches told me at Notre Dame that he would be a 1st or 2nd round pick as a wide receiver, but like, you're never going to put Saquon Barkley at wide receiver because he's that good at running back, right? And so I think that there's a lot that he's going to be able to do schematically, like Jahmyr Gibbs did for the Lions, without, just being pigeonholed into that very specific running back slot. So I don't know. I view him a little bit outside of that norm of positional value.
I would agree with that.
You could advertise the idea that, like, if he got to them where they are, like, the Commanders could be in position to trade that pick and accrue future picks. But if I'm Dan Quinn, like, I want someone to put on the tickets. I want someone to lead the league in jersey sales along with my quarterback and build that fervor from 2 years ago and not lose this job. I'm not selling picks down the river for the next coach to go enjoy as his supper. So let's move on here to the New York Giants. They came in dead last in the NFC East. It is not 1990. It is not 1986 anymore in New York. It's been a bit of a mess. But John Harbaugh arrives. It feels like a major transitional period for the New York Giants. They hold the 5th pick in the draft. They added Tremaine Edmonds, Isaiah Likely at tight end, Greg Newsome, the former Browns and Jaguars cornerback, Patrick Ricard at fullback. There's some Ravens scenarios here. Jermaine Illuminor and Evan Neal kept along the offensive line on the offensive line. Wan'Dale Robinson out the door, Daniel Bellinger. So this is a team that's looking at defensive line help, linebacker help, wide receiver. And I would ask Dave this, like, if you're the Giants, like, you can go in a couple different directions here. And there are some young pieces on this team that you like. And it feels like maybe Harbaugh can get them to be what they could have been last year record-wise in a better situation. But is this pick, if you're a John Harbaugh and you've been around the league for as long as he has, I guess more of a symbolic pick to make it clear what your franchise is going to be about under John Harbaugh versus what maybe falls to them? Like, is it something that this is who the New York Giants are under Harbaugh?
It sure feels that way. And here's what I love about it, Mark. Because of the personality and the visibility of John Harbaugh and where he's coming from and what we know about him, you could just say whoever they pick is a symbol. You could just contort it to apply to whoever you want. If it's Jeremiah Love, it's like, John Harbaugh's here and we're going to run the damn football. Or if it's an offensive lineman, it's John Harbaugh's here and he cares about the fundamentals. We're making the boring pick. Like, this is what we're going to do. If it's Sonny Styles, John Harbaugh's here and we're going to play smash mouth New York Giant football and tackle the hell out of the ball carrier. Like, you could just make a pick and then say that it applies to John Harbaugh. It almost doesn't matter who they wind up taking. But yeah, I think that's right. But maybe it's a little more malleable than we give it credit for.
The Giants, by the way, I don't know, Justin, if you want to give me the breaking news drop, because this name was not in your graphic here because it literally just happened. But the Giants just signed one of my favorite players in free agency, so I'm very jacked about this. Do you want me to reveal it to the masses right now? Daniel Falele, okay? I mean, how do you not love this guy?
You're kidding.
Yes.
I mean, I can't say I'm
kidding that
surprised.
he's one of my favorite players, or I'm kidding that John Harbaugh signed another Raven.
Maybe a little bit of both.
I'm kidding that John Harbaugh went out and got another Raven, and the guy that most Ravens fans were so ready to be done with. But I love that.
I fail to look at this person, and maybe it is just like a sheer massive humanity thing, but I think when it works, it's so aesthetically pleasing watching someone this size just devour someone that I don't understand why it can't work conceptually on a down by down basis, or that you can just find a place to put this man and improve your offense in some way, shape, or form. But that is irregardless of the point. I think that the Giants are going offensive line here. I think they need offensive line here. And you make a great point, Dave, about the narrativization of the pick. This has been a 25-year issue with the New York Giants. It's the health of the offensive line. It's been grossly unhealthy. And I think it's valuable for Harbaugh to come in here and put his stamp on how to draft offensive linemen. I mean, we've had so many misses at this position over the last 15 years with essentially the same version of Giants groupthink. And you have what I really like, because you signed Jermaine Illuminor in free agency to be your, re-signed Jermaine Illuminor to be your right tackle. But you have a lot of these right tackle caliber offensive line prospects that are sitting in the top 10 that can all profile as guards at the NFL level, and you can start them there and then you can grow them, and there can be this organic process. And so I don't know, there's a lot of different directions that the Giants can go here, but I think it's got to be offensive line first. You have a young quarterback, you have a running game that you like. I mean, I think this is where you need to put your money.
Could it switch up if, I mean, I know Kayvon Thibodeau's been mentioned as a trade candidate, obviously, for a while, and Dexter Lawrence has bubbled up saying that he wants to trade. It sounds like Harbaugh feels confident that they'll keep him around or maybe re-sign him, but that could change the landscape for the New York Giants. I tell you, why do people want out of this organization? I'm trying to figure out why Dexter Lawrence doesn't want to be with a John Harbaugh type who's finally arrived at the Giants, like a coach you can count on, and it's like people want, I'm out of here.
Do you love, by the way, that John Harbaugh talked on Tuesday, and when he was asked about Dexter Lawrence, he's like, super important, we want him around. And then was asked about Kayvon Thibodeau, and he's like, anyone could be traded. You know, it's like, if you're the two of them watching that, it's just like, oh, okay, one of us is not going to be here next year.
I tend to agree with Conor. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens with Dexter Lawrence, but the amount of resources that they've sunk into their defensive front, going back to that well at the risk of not addressing something that could use it a little bit more. I told Graver this off the air before we came on. I think it's not even that I love him that much as a prospect. I just think Francis Maui-Noah gets overlooked a lot in these conversations.
Yes, sir.
I think Tennessee and New York would both do well to draft that guy. And maybe it's not going to be the best pick in franchise history, but you could do a hell of a lot of good. And it's for similar reasons. I mean, he could play guard right away. He could eventually be your right tackle. If he really exceeds expectations, maybe he's your right tackle sooner rather than later. But for Tennessee and the Giants, I'd be pretty pumped about that pick.
We received something just randomly in the HTC voicemail box relating to the Giants and their pick in the draft. So I'm just going to play this.
Oh!
Welcome to a very special edition of Walking with Giants. My auditory love letter to pro football's great Tiffany franchise, the New York Giants. Hello, it's Chris Walken. I'm having breakfast. I got a coffee from down the street to my favorite diner. I brought it home, made myself some old, watery eggs and sardines. Breakfast of champions. I wanted to call, I wanted to say, this draft nonsense, it's heated, it's crazy. What are my G-men gonna do? No one knows, but I can tell you right now what they should do. Don't fall in love. Fall in scat. As in scataboo. That's right. Why fall in love when you could embrace a man who bulldozes monsters of the gridiron like the little babies in a playground? No, it's not time to fall in love. It's time to roll around and scat. Walking out.
Well, I guess I take from that Jeremiah Love at number 5 would not please Christopher Walken or his one-man podcast.
Which he just mails to us, by the way. I love that he doesn't.
He emails it to us. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, he doesn't trust like Apple Podcasts to distribute it like every other one. He wants to. It's like a direct-to-consumer business, which is really
I am immediately after we get done here gonna go watch the SNL skits where Walken is in the like hotel penthouse, the Continental or whatever it's called.
Right. The difference here is that's the real Christopher Walken on this is his actual show. But Dave, thank you so much. You've said it all. You took us team by team through the gnarly and rough and tumble NFC East, and we'd love to have you on again sometime soon. Thanks, bud.
This was a blast, guys. It was great to see you. Great talking ball. Let's do it again soon.
We will. Let's go to break.
When you start something new, whether it's a podcast, a business, or a side project, the what ifs show up fast. I remember thinking, what if nobody cares about this program? What if it doesn't work out?
But Dan, the funny thing is, those same what ifs can also push you to go for it. Because what if it does work? And if you're starting a business, having the right tools makes a huge difference.
Oh, Sessy, ever the optimist. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. They make it incredibly easy to get started with hundreds of ready-to-use templates that help you build a beautiful online store that fits your brand.
Shopify is also packed with helpful AI tools that can write product descriptions, generate page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Plus, Shopify helps you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns so people actually hear about your brand.
It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/HTC. Go to shopify.com/HTC. That's shopify.com/HTC.
AI is moving fast across the enterprise. But without visibility, it's just chaos. Different tools, different models, different teams using AI in completely different ways. ServiceNow turns that chaos into control. With the AI Control Tower, you see all your AI across the business in one place. What it's doing, what it's done, and what it's about to do. So you stay in control. To put AI to work for people, visit servicenow.com.
Life is full of choices, but the choice between getting crispy chicken nuggets or a Crunchwrap Slider isn't one you'll have to make. The new Crispy Chicken Crunchwrap Slider at Taco Bell. All white meat chicken nuggets, breaded in tortilla chips, wrapped up, sauce and all, inside a slider-sized Crunchwrap. Choose from creamy chipotle or jalapeno honey mustard. Well, there we go. Life, still full of choices. The new Crispy Chicken Crunchwrap Slider. A brand new classic. Only at Taco Bell. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time and while supplies last.
Okay, and we are back. We are now going to take a look at the NFC North, really with one of our favorites. He's become a big part of the Heed the Call family. It's Arif Hasan. He is the CEO and chief writer at Wide Left Football and host of the Locked On Vikings After Dark podcast. Arif, I've taken a look at this After Dark podcast. It's got us kind of a little bit of a sexy late night flair to it. It's a little different than some of the other Locked On offerings that platform offers.
Yeah, they kind of let us do whatever, and then we asked Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints to do the intro for us, and it was very smooth and alluring, and we decided to kind of keep that vibe going. We've been talking about conspiracy theories. They might not even relate to the NFL. Just like whatever comes up. Ostensibly, the Vikings are a jumping off point. Like we talked about whether they could trade for Dexter Lawrence, but that's just an excuse to hang out, which has been really fun. I enjoy it.
You like talking Vikings till the acid hits.
Right, no, exactly. Yeah, like it's very... We're hoping for a Doc Ellis game at one point in the middle of our pod. Like that's the...
I get that. All right, well, let's dive in here. We'll start with the The 11-6 Chicago Bears, division winning from a year ago. An incredible debut for Ben Johnson. But it is a team that looks a little different than a year ago. They spent so much money and did a good job shoring up their offensive line. They're a little more cash strapped this time around, but they did add people in free agency. They got safety Kobe Bryant, Devin Bush, Garrett Bradbury at center, Neville Gallimore, Khalif Raymond, stole that away from a division rival. And, you know, the Garrett Bradbury addition was because Drew Dahlman also retired. So that's a change along the offensive line. They moved on from DJ Moore, trading him. Tremaine Edmonds is also gone. So I guess with the Bears, they've got the 25th pick in the draft. It seems to me, Arif, that they've got some pretty clear needs. And I would look at defensive line. I would look at the fact that this was a team that was linked to Max Crosby early on before that thing turned into an apocalypse between the Raiders. And like, I would just say this, is it fair to look at this team and say that they are looking for an edge rusher to round out this defense? Because the offense feels pretty set to me.
Yeah, which I think is kind of like an interesting situation that they find themselves in because, you know, I feel like they've been constantly looking for ways to get that offense going for whatever young quarterback they have. And they finally, I think, have achieved that. Like, you can always use another wide receiver, but I think for the most part, you know, they're good, right? On offense, and anything that they add there will be a value add as opposed to filling in a need. So defensively, I think edge rusher makes a ton of sense. They want somebody opposite Montez Sweat. I do think that they will want to take a look at safety. They brought in Kobe Bryant, $13.3 million a year, right? But they lost both of their starting safeties in free agency. I really thought they were going to hold on to Brisker. But like Cam Lewis, I don't think is enough to kind of fill that gap. So it wouldn't shock me if they looked at safety and where they're picking in the draft. Safety is an area where they could look, and edge is a fairly deep class. So, you know, I wouldn't be shocked if they went safety then edge, or edge then safety, or like we've mentioned a little bit, just that the defensive line could be a first round pick as well. I do think sneakily, maybe not a first round pick, but Garrett Bradbury's on a 1-year deal, and he's at the end of his, you know, so like I think that they'll want a long-term safety or center to replace Bradbury. I think that that's going to be important.
We pounded the table on this in the middle of the season, at the end of the season. The Bears were historically fortunate that all three of their offensive line signings maintained perfect health throughout the season and were able to kind of form the center of that unit. But everyone's going defense with the Bears, but I do wonder if Ben Johnson is concerned enough. I mean, he's up there with McVay and all those play callers on self-scouting and self-evolution. If you looked at the Bears, they were this, you know, 2 tight end team, you know, a decent amount of 3-by-1, but, you know, almost no 2 back. You know, there's stuff that they weren't doing, maybe that some other teams were doing, that I think that were run by offensive minds that I think Ben respects. And you try to follow that thread and project it outward, where it's like, would Chicago truly try to surprise someone and add something strange to the mix to diversify themselves offensively? I mean, defense makes all the sense in the world, but Ben can control the offense, and Ben is in charge of everything when it comes to the Chicago Bears right now.
I've also seen Caden Proctor, the Alabama tackle, linked to them in a couple different mocks, and that dude is 358 pounds. I mean, they're trying to retain and keep that. Like the other teams in this division, like, I mean, the Lions up until now, their identity on offense is what's going to get them there. So I think that's interesting that maybe they pull a surprise at some point. Let's move on to the Green Bay Packers. This is the team that came in second, went to the wild card, lost to the Bears. Matt LaFleur catching some heat last season for a number of things. And I think it's an interesting point in time for the Green Bay Packers. They added Zaire Franklin, Benjamin St-Juste, and Javon Hargrave and Sky Moore. But they traded away Rashawn Gary. Quay Walker is gone. The best backup quarterback in the league, Malik Willis, is out the door. And they suffered a number of... I question the defense because Jeff Hafley also goes to the Miami Dolphins. I thought that Jeff Hafley, after many years of the defense being a problem in the wrong way, really shored that up and made it a strength. And you trade for Micah Parsons, and now the coordinator's out the door. And they are definitely looking for defensive line help, cornerback as well, and maybe guard along the offensive line. You don't have a first-round pick because of the Parsons trade. So I guess I'd ask the question, and this is also a team that, we're at the owners' meetings and Matt LaFleur is answering questions about not player revolt, but players that last year did not like their roles. And I think like in Romeo Dobbs and Rashawn Gary, those are probably two of those names reading reports, but you've also lost Elkin Jenkins and Rasheed Walker. So there's suddenly, I would ask the question, Arif, like, did this team get better? I'm struggling to see a team that improved so far this offseason.
Yeah, they had a lot of losses, obviously throughout the year with the trade as well as at the end of the year. And it would make sense, I think, for them to go in a lot of different directions. I think if they didn't like kind of trust the way the Lucas Van Ness improved this last year, and they wanted like a more solid or reliable edge rusher, maybe to compete with Lucas Van Ness in the second round, it wouldn't shock me if they went in that direction. Even as it would make sense maybe to grab an offensive lineman. I think they're actually very confident with their offensive line setup. Wherever they're going to put Jordan Morgan, wherever they're going to put Sean Ryan, like all of that, I think they think they're good there. I don't know if I agree, but it wouldn't shock me if they avoided offensive line early on and tried to fill out that defensive room. Again, of course, like they'll need a cornerback. I think that they want interior pass rush, because I think getting Javon Hargrave is not going to fix things long term for you. And like the rest of the defensive line is like, aside from Devontae Wyatt, very big, very kind of like, like Nazir Stackhouse, like big, right? And so you might want some interior pass rushers more along that defensive line. And so it wouldn't shock me if they went in a bunch of different directions here. Linebacker makes a lot of sense. This is a pretty good middle of the draft linebacker group, right? Losing Quay Walker, I don't know that Zaire Franklin is going to solve a ton of problems for you, but having Edge Cooper and having someone kind of paired with him, I understand. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think they want to keep somebody like Isaiah McDuffie, doing special team stuff. So there are a bunch of directions they could go in the second round here, but I really think that edge defender would make a lot of sense, even if they're happy with Lucas Van Ness, because you don't even have Micah Parsons probably at the beginning of the year either, right? Like that's something that you want to account for.
I agree when you said interior pass rush, because it was funny when Jeff Hafley was still there, the pre-draft press conference last year, before last year's draft, they were talking about, or maybe it was the end of season one, the lack of interior pass rush and the fact that they needed more interior pass rush. And it was funny because then Brian Gutekunst goes out and gets Micah Parsons. And it's sort of like, hey, I needed like an SUV to get the kids to school. And everyone's like, cool, here's a Lamborghini. It takes premium fuel. Only one person's allowed to sit in it. And it's very, very expensive. So please don't break it. And I think what Green Bay needed was perhaps something a little bit different. I'm not saying you would turn down Micah Parsons if Jerry Jones is handing him to you on a silver platter, but I am saying that there is a foundational need, and this is an interesting defensive line class because probably your best tackle isn't even going to go in the first round. This isn't like a class where you have your classic, Aaron Donald interior menace guy. I mean, it might not be until the second round, and so maybe that Green Bay, the need matches a little bit where they are draft-wise, and they can finally start to button up that part of their defense.
Can I just ask you, either one of you guys, like, when you lose like a Jeff Hafley, right? And this, like he went and got a job off of what he did last year, and he totally deserved it. Like a new coordinator comes in, like whether it's scheme or not, like what happens to the players? Like how much unrest does it cause when you've got to suddenly deal with a completely new leader of the defense, or is it just business as usual and you move forward?
In my experience, it really depends on the reputation of the play caller coming in, and individually whether those players see a role for themselves. Like I know that when Brian Flores came in, a bunch of players were like, well, what do I do here? Like, I don't know. And so like all of the individual meetings that he had with those players were really important to making sure that things could work out. So that's my experience. I do know that a lot of players like, now figured out I'm talented enough to fit in any defense, but it is dependent on, I think, a couple of those factors.
It does remind me, I was actually, for a reference that I made in a column for SI, I was watching all of the Robert California scenes from The Office, like the post Steve Carell. And there is like a realism to that where, I remember, for example, like when Ben McAdoo took over as offensive coordinator of the Giants, and they had, oh God, what was his name? For years, the same guy. Now it's slipping my mind. But, one player was like, yeah, we just sat in his office and he just stared at me, and he wanted me to talk first. And so we just sat there in silence. And so I think schematically there is obviously some differences, but there are some personality differences too, where there is a consternation, there's a worry that like, hey, does this guy hate me? I don't know what's going on here. I mean, I don't know if I like this or not. So yeah,
we all know what it's like to suddenly have a new manager, a boss. Like it's a real dice roll, isn't it? So
right, yeah.
Let's go to break.
Understanding power requires more than headlines. I'm Peter Hamby, host of The Powers That Be, a podcast from Puck examining politics, economics, and media to provide context, analysis, and clarity without sensationalism. We ask how power operates, who benefits, and what's at stake. If you want to move beyond breaking news to deeper understanding, join us on The Powers That Be. New episodes every weekday. Follow The Powers That Be wherever you get your podcasts.
You tell yourself no one wants your college-era band tees, but on Depop, people are searching for exactly what you've got. You once paid a small fortune for them at merch stands. Now, a teenager who calls them vintage will offer that same small fortune back. Sell them easily on Depop. Just snap a few photos and we'll take care of the rest. Who knew your questionable music taste would be a money-making machine? Your style can make you cash. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
Okay, and we are back. Our team, our third team, Arif, it's your Minnesota Vikings. You talk about them in the day, you talk about them late at night.
got
Obviously,
Kyler Murray, problem solved. We don't even need to do this.
Don't worry about it.
They got it, baby.
Are we good here? We're good? We'll just move on. It is interesting because like I think they're at such a fascinating turning point, inflection point of like your general manager is out the door. Rob Brzezinski is your interim general manager. The draft's coming up. You really weren't able to add too much in free agency. You re-signed a bunch of your own guys, but Kyler Murray's the big signing there. Jalen Naylor is gone. Ryan Kelly, Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, CJ Ham. It looks like they're a team that, I could see them keep beefing up the defense, the defensive line. Center is probably something to look at, safety. And, this is a team that missed the playoffs last year. I feel like Kevin O'Connell, I'm trying to think of outside, because he's in that sort of world of like, he's looked at like a Shanahan. And yet he's had to, like Shanahan in some seasons, deal with so many quarterbacks during his tenure. And the biggest question mark is the Kyler Murray fit. And I agree with Dave Helman, what he mentioned to us off the air, that he could see this going well, because I do believe that Kyler Murray in the right place and time can be maximized. Is he a perfect fit for Kevin O'Connell? I don't know, but it is also a team that JJ McCarthy hangs out in the atmosphere as an organizational failure at this point. I don't know if he's even going to be on the roster come September. It wouldn't shock me if something else happened there, depending on the tenor of the whole thing. Like, where are you with the Vikings? Like, is this the kind of thing where Kevin O'Connell, of all people, could find himself in a little bit of trouble if things went south? Or is he just absolutely locked in because, as he should be, but things can get ugly quickly if the season goes off the rails and the Kyler Murray thing doesn't work, and you've got JJ McCarthy not working also?
Yeah, this is kind of one of those where it's like he's not on a hot seat, but like someone is warming it up, right? Like there is some question mark about whether the Vikings will continue to retain him, which to me is a different question than should they, right? I think the way the Vikings make decisions is that they really kind of demand, consistent playoff appearances, whether or not that's healthy for the franchise long term. And I think that 2 consecutive years of missing the playoffs will lead to some serious questions. I think that the reason, one of many reasons, that they let go of Kwesi the way that they did was so that they could retain Kevin, but still hold someone accountable for how poorly everything went. But we both know JJ McCarthy was a Kevin O'Connell decision, not Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah decision, right? But that leads to kind of like, can you maximize Kyler Murray? Will that lead you to a lot of places? But there's a lot of attention paid to the quarterback position, and rightly so. Is the biggest problem. But the Vikings have a lot of questions along the defense, a defense that performed very well last year, outstandingly well 2 years ago, incredibly well for most of the year 3 years ago. But Harrison Smith, we technically don't have an answer. The Vikings technically released him, right? But they were very clear when they released him that they are open to bringing him back. It was a post-June 1st release. It was meant to spread out the cap, more of an accounting move. We don't know. But either way, you still need to resolve safety. So that is an area where a lot of people are mocking that position of the Vikings in the first round, with or without losing Harrison Smith, but especially with him because they just did not get a lot out of Theo Jackson there. Cornerback is another area where I think that they would want to pay a fair amount of attention to, because they traded Blackman away, I think, for like a 6th or something like that. And it turns out they very much needed, a nickel corner, having Byron Murphy and then just whoever kind of filling it out like Isaiah Rodgers, or they bring in James Pierre, but I still think that there's another opportunity to bring in a corner. Defensive line, they lost both Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. Jalen Redmond is a diamond in the rough, but I think you want more bodies there, especially an interior run stuffer like a Caleb Banks type. And then they've got like running back to fill out, receiver to fill out. I think one area that they'll probably pay more attention to than people have been giving them in mock drafts is center, because Ryan Kelly retired, and Michael Juergens lost his role as the backup center halfway through the season to a guy who has never snapped at the high school, college, or NFL level, right? Like
it's always what
he's
you
a
want.
6'5", yeah, right. He's a 6'5" center who's like rocketing the ball over Carson Wentz's head, and you're like, I don't know if this is going to work out long term. So I do think that one's probably the highest priority that we're not talking about, but like safety is the very public one, and resolve, if we say that the quarterback position is resolved, obviously a huge question mark. One of the goals here is to take advantage of how good this defense is, but the defense has sloughed off in talent in a lot of big ways over the last 2 years that they really need to pay attention to.
I wonder if it's like, and I'm curious if from your point, if you think I'm overstating it, but I do think that there was a degree of hubris offensively to allow things to progress the way that they did, right? But and on the defensive side of the ball, you have an equally talented coaching staff. And are you allowing that same degree of hubris to take over where it's like, oh, I'm Brian Flores, I can jam this thing in with just about anybody. But the truth is, Brian had players who could self-call that defense, who could call the defense on the fly on the field. It was similar to what the Seahawks did in the Super Bowl, where you're empowering a handful of really smart players. You're setting the parameters during the week. You're showing them what to look for. But on the field, they're making all those decisions on the fly. Like, you're hearing in real time, Harrison Smith or whoever's got the green dot is like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're covering it this way. We see it this way. This is what we want. And so as a coach, like, that's exactly the way that you want it. But you need that talent, that caliber of player intellectually to be able to fill out that roster. And so the slow trickle of players that leave Minnesota, every little bit of kind of brain drain that happens there, I think that impacts the efficacy, God, I thought I had it, of Brian Flores' defense. Yeah. You know, when you have a big word coming and, it's like 5 words ahead and you're just like, you're just gearing up for it and you're like, I'm going to fucking nail this, man. I'm going to say efficacy on the podcast. And then you just slip over it and you just feel like a total douchebag. So
I believe I've done that about 4 times on this episode alone. So you have an ally on that front.
I mean, that's what happens when you're a writer who podcasts, right? I do it all the time.
Yes. In that order.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, to your point about the Brian Flores defense and the way they set things up, I think there is an amount of hubris there. I think that they have a high expectation for players, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but then you have to acquire players who can meet that expectation. And so I thought there was a ton of hubris defensively the last offseason when they brought in Isaiah Rodgers, who mostly worked out, but I thought that was a risk. Jeff Okudah did not work out at all. Theo Jackson they promoted internally to replace Cam Bynum. Awful decision, I think, there. And I think it was just like look, we'll handle it. We know what's going on. And when you've got players like Harrison Smith, like Andrew Van Ginkel, who's got the ability to make these on-the-fly calls, right? When you've got somebody like a Blake Cashman, who's got that astounding capacity to make up for seeing what the defensive line is doing and seeing them screw up, and then you change what you're going to do in order to kind of resolve it. Like, those are fantastic players to have, but you're losing those players. And you keep on acquiring players that maybe don't have either the physical tools, like sometimes Josh Metellus, or maybe the mental tools necessarily, which I don't like to name names for that, but like we've seen that on the Vikings defense where they just don't have the capacity. They may have the physical capability to do what they need to do, but they don't have the capacity. And so, you see that with the way that they benched a linebacker, they benched Ivan Pace, partway through the year. And I think that to bring in Eric Wilson, who, was very good. But I think that there's been a lot of attrition on this defense that I don't know that they've got the ability to replace because they were so confident about their ability to find diamonds in the rough. And they can kind of do it at a better than league average pace with players like Andrew Van Ginkel and Jalen Redmond and, in a way, Isaiah Rodgers. But you keep throwing those darts and you're going to land on a Jeff Okudah, right? Like you're not going to hit all of the, and so you just get a high talent player. I don't think it's like that complicated sometimes. And then you end up in a spot you're trading away Harrison Phillips and you bring in Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave way above the amount of value that they can provide you because you're making up for all of this lost talent. And that's no way to live.
Do you think Jonathan Grenard winds up elsewhere, or is that drama winding down?
I think that drama is winding down. I think that there was a real possibility. I think it was an over 50% possibility back in March that he was going to get traded. But my understanding is that there were teams willing to pay the draft value price, the trade price for him, but were not willing to pay for his contract demands. And there are teams willing to pay his contract demands, but not the trade value price. And so the fact that you had both of those things made it seem very likely that at some point something would get resolved, but it never did. I think it's a little bit too late now. I wouldn't be shocked to see like an after draft, trade, probably a player for player swap with some draft pick consideration. But I think that is now on the low end of likelihood, whereas, right before free agency, I thought it was on the kind of high end.
All right, we'll move to the final team in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions. Another team in this division in an interesting place. Taylor Decker, offensive tackle, gone. David Montgomery gone. Alex Anzalone, Al-Qadim Muhammad. Pieces of the puzzle that were very important to the makeup of this Lions team. And you add Isaiah Pacheco. I think that's a step down from Montgomery, clearly, to me. Juice Scruggs. I want to have a child named Juice. I'm going to have another child and just name it Juice Scruggs. Yeah. That's my takeaway from taking a look at this list here. I think what's interesting is happening to the Lions. Tell me if you guys agree, is that I feel like over the last couple of years, you could walk into a bar and just say kind of Detroit Lions to the guy sitting next to you on the stool. It's like, we get it. We get what this team's about. I think they had one of the strongest identities in the entire conference. And then you lose Ben Johnson, who's a huge part of that. And then your battering offensive line starts aging out over the course of a couple seasons here. And you wind up with injuries. You're fourth in the division. So it's kind of like, where do you go from here? They've got the 17th pick in the draft. It just feels like a team that is, we know what they want to be. I think they can get there. They're definitely, I think, in a division that knows who they are, that's going to challenge them. And has their identity floated away? Did they need to make a change at all, Arif, and who the Detroit Lions think they are at this point?
I don't think that they need to change their identity, because I think if they do that, they're going to lose a lot of what works for them. But I do think that they need to, find players that absolutely, the chew through glass kind of players, that also happen to have the talent to live up to that. And that's going to require a heavy investment. They've said, I think very recently, actually, they're comfortable with Penei Sewell playing left tackle, and that leaves you open for right tackle. They brought in Larry Borum, so maybe, but I think that, there's a lot of right tackles in this draft that they could probably go after that absolutely would be the MFers that the Lions absolutely love to have, right? So I could see that. They do need a center, right, with the Ragnow retirement. I don't know that, I guess they brought in Cade Mays for quite a bit of money, so that's probably it. But I just think that there's a lot of investment that they want to make that is hard to find, because the players that win through grit often are winning through grit because they have to and don't necessarily have the talent, right, to just win on talent alone. And that's who they are, and that's how they coach, and that's how the scheme is predicated on. But you do end up with a battering offensive line that has a bunch of injuries, a battering secondary that has a ton of injuries. I think 2 of them might not start the season. I don't know what's going to happen with Kirby Joseph or Brian Branch, but you need to bring in cornerbacks because I think they were even on cornerbacks in terms of lost and gained. You need to bring in safeties. You need to bring in, I think, obviously a linebacker, like you mentioned. I don't think Derek Barnes can work with Jack Campbell in that same way. He's a very sub-package player if he's capable enough. I think you need to bring in an edge rusher, get a constant conversation, bringing in an edge rusher to complement Aiden Hutchinson. I don't think a DJ Wanham is going to do it. Because Marcus Davenport didn't do it. I don't know that Peyton Turner is going to do it. So, yeah, it's not every, like, they bring in players like Ahmad Hassanin, who, if you know anything about him, is such an easy guy to cheer for, and absolutely, like, he yells in practice just to yell, not because anything's happening, right? Like, the truest Detroit Lion I've ever, he did CrossFit in Egypt for, like, 20 years, or whatever, right? He's like a CrossFit champion.
I like this guy.
Yeah, he rules, right? But he's not very good at football, and so like that's the challenge for the Lions is like you need to bring in a ton of Ahmad Hassanins who are like good at football, and then those players are increasingly difficult to find. I don't think that they should change their identity, but I do think that puts them with a small margin for error in terms of acquiring players that fit what they do.
Well, because with Dave Helman made a great point, I think, about John Harbaugh earlier about like you can narrativize a pick to fit anything, right? And I think what Dan was so good at when he was with the Lions was recognizing the lack of skill and then telling everyone in the locker room that their strength was grit, right? Because, you know, it's like, right. It's what your parents say, especially to me. It's like, well, Conor, you never give up because I have no other choice, right? You know, there's just, you just have to keep going, right? And I think that really you got to the point where I remember Dan actually telling me this, like, I want to set this team up to the point where I recede completely from all of this. And he made the analogy like I am the brake in case of emergency behind the fire glass, right? The problem is the emergency has occurred, like massive attrition on the offensive line, brain drain on your coaching staff, and now grit is not central to what you need to stay afloat in this division. It's just talent. It's a passable offensive line, right? It's a passable secondary. And so Campbell's got to kind of jump in and reimagine this thing. It's not let me re-find a bunch of players that fit what I said a couple of years ago during COVID. It's like, let me put my coaching hat on because I've been in a lot of smart organizations that don't need this fairy tale to get us going. And let me find 5 or 6 good players in this draft that can keep us in contention in this division.
It was almost like he was obviously and overtly, and Hard Knocks showed this too, the perfect coach at the perfect time for a team right. and a fan base that had been lost at sea for literally decades. So you're right, though, but like the best organizations that stay afloat for, why am I continually using water references here? But like, if you're going to do that, like you have to rethink about who you are. And I do think that like the strength here is Dan Campbell. You found one of those guys that is a great manager of players and men, and like I kind of trust they'll get back. I mean, they were in disaster last year, but it was a disappointing campaign. So we will see. For both of you, what have you got coming up that people can check out, Arif?
Yeah, so I'm doing like a pro days that stood out to me. I'm covering people from like Culver Stockton College in Missouri, just like so that's coming up probably Thursday morning. So hopefully very soon by the time people listen to this. And then I've got my consensus board stuff. So I bring in over 100 big boards from around the NFL, various draft analysts, and tease out not just the aggregate rankings from the draft, but like who are the most polarizing players, which players have the largest variance, which insiders like players versus people who don't have as many sources inside buildings like players, stuff like that. A bunch of different conclusions you can draw from finding rankings from 112 different draft analysts. Is one of my biggest projects every year. I love doing it. That's coming
beautiful.
Up soon.
Conor?
I mean, nothing like that. We got the we have the Sports Illustrated draft preview issue coming out. I'm very excited. Got to spend time with a player who I imagine is going to be going in the top 5, who Justin might be pretty excited to read about. So we'll see. Maybe dropping a little hint there. But buy a magazine, motherfuckers. Like this shit of you being on your phone all the damn time is killing you. And you could just go to Barnes & Noble. It's there. You could sign up for it and we'll mail it to you. So all you got to do is walk to the mailbox. Like every every week I talk to someone, they're like, oh, I remember, when I was a kid and it was awesome. Like I got home from school and like the magazine was right in my mailbox. It's still there. Like,
is this Burst from Bert and Ernie?
You can still do that. You can still do that. It's great. It's awesome. Like, so just sign up for it and we'll send it to you.
Yeah, unplug and read a magazine. Right?
Yeah, we'll send it to you. That's the thing. Like, I'm going to mail it to you. Not personally, but like someone somewhere in an office is going to mail it to you and you're going to love it. So sign up for it.
I am in an apartment building up here in Hollywood, and it's right along Hollywood Boulevard, as I mentioned. But I get the New York Times physically delivered.
Yeah.
And it's also put outside our building along what is, I would call a 5 out of 10. I'd rate it at its best moment out of 10 as a street in terms of what's going on there. But so it's kind of potluck if you find the paper or not when you leave in the morning. But when I do walk around with it, to your point, it's a world of people that are visiting from other countries. But when they see me with a newspaper under my arm, I am convinced they believe that I've marched out of a time machine. Like I went to a Starbucks once and asked, like, oh, do you guys do like the Sunday New York Times? And I sound really old saying this. The guy had never heard of the New York Times or the fact that a physical paper would be released on Sunday of a larger variety. So I'm with you.
I hope you're wearing like a vest. You've got like a little Newsies cap on. You're walking around. You got like
I can work
a nice
on that.
watch on. Yeah.
I'm going to work on that.
This is going to annoy the shit out of me, and it's going to be someone like Justin in like 12 years, like some tech bro piece of shit who's going to be like, we're all tired of AI. And, so what we decided to do is like put it on physical paper to read. And like, we call it like iPaper, and everyone's gonna be like, whoa. And it's like, no,
they've already done that. Great. It's paper. It's Paperwhite. It's on e-ink. It replicates paper in a ton of different ways. And the worst thing is I have seriously considered purchasing it before I was like, wait a minute, I could just buy a book.
Buy a book. I know.
Hang on a sec. I'm the tech bro asshole in this scenario?
White gravy. Yeah,
out of everybody here, who else would be?
Well, you took a stray there. I think that's
tech bro. I've never been described as a tech bro, but
you're the one that is on video vaping, right? That feels like the most tech bro thing out of all four of us.
That's fair.
You have the most hair out of all of us. You're also the best shape out of all of us. Yeah, I mean, I think you've got a lot going for you.
I think you're in better shape than me, but yeah, no, for sure.
Well, you seem to have low body fat, Justin. I'll leave it there. Like from what I can tell from a distance. All right, okay, we've had enough. We will be back on Thursday with another episode. Thank you so much to Dave Helman. Thank you, Arif, for joining us. It's always a pleasure. We'll have you back on again soon. So get back on that little horsey. The off season keeps going, and keep doing what you must. You heed the call.
The right window treatments change everything. Your sleep, your privacy, the way every room looks and feels. At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years making it surprisingly simple to get exactly what your home needs. We've covered over 25 million windows and have 50,000 5-star reviews to prove we deliver. Whether you DIY it or want a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we have you covered. Real design professionals, free samples, zero pressure. Right now, get up to 45% off with minimum purchase, plus get a free professional measure at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.